अस्सलाम वालेकुम नाज़रीन, मैं हूं डॉक्टर शुजात। आप देख रहे हैं प्रोग्राम कॉर्पोरेट लाउंज। नाज़रीन, ना सिर्फ नेशनल लेवल पे इकोनॉमिक सिचुएशंस बड़ी अजीबो गरीब सी होती जा रही हैं, बल्कि इंटरनेशनल लेवल पे भी जो मुआशी अबतरी है वो बज़ाहिर हमें नज़र आ रही है। और इस तरह से लग रहा है कि डेवलपिंग कंट्रीज़ के साथ साथ जो डेवलप्ड कंट्रीज़ हैं वो भी मुआशी मुश्किल का शिकार हैं। लेकिन बहुत सारे डेवलपिंग कंट्रीज़ की ये शिकायत है कि उनकी तकलीफ़ात में, उनकी मुश्किलात में जहाँ पर उनका अपना हाथ है, वहाँ पर डेवलप्ड कंट्रीज़ का भी बहुत ज़्यादा हाथ है। कुछ लोगों का ये आर्गूमेंट है कि जो दुनिया के तरक्की याफ्ता ममालिक हैं वो ममालिक अपनी प्रोडक्शन फैसिलिटीज़ दुनिया के तरक्की पजीर ममालिक में भेज देते हैं। वहाँ पे पोल्यूशंस और ये सारी चीज़ें और बीमारियाँ उसकी वजह से होती हैं, और उसके जो प्रॉफिट्स होते हैं वो वापस अपने पास ले जाते हैं। इसके अलावा भी बहुत सारे आर्गूमेंट्स हैं जो कि इस ज़िम्न में दिए जाते हैं कि डेवलप्ड कंट्रीज़ की वजह से डेवलपिंग कंट्रीज़ आगे नहीं बढ़ पाते। तो आज का प्रोग्राम हमने स्पेशली बाईलिंगुअल रखा है। प्रोग्राम की लैंग्वेज हमारी इंग्लिश होगी, और क्योंकि हमारे जो एक्सपर्ट हैं गो के वो उर्दू भी समझते हैं, लेकिन इंटरनेशनल ऑडियंस के लिए हम इसको इंग्लिश में रखेंगे, क्योंकि हमारा जो टॉपिक है दैट वुड बी द रोल ऑफ द डेवलप्ड कंट्रीज़ इन द डेवलपमेंटल लेवल्स ऑफ द डेवलपिंग कंट्रीज़। और इसके साथ साथ हम ये भी डिस्कस करेंगे कि पोस्ट कोविड-19 क्या हमारे सॉल्यूशंस हो सकते हैं। वैसे कोविड-19 और 20 की जैसे ही ज़ुबान में आता है तो हमारी एक मिनिस्टर साहिबा हैं, वो आप सबको याद आ जाती होंगी, और मुझे भी वो याद आ गई थी, इसलिए मैं थोड़ा सा घबरा गया था। बट वी हैव द इंटरनेशनल guest with us, and we have a very esteemed national guest, although he is also international. But let me introduce you first, my panel, and then we'll be heading toward today's discussion, which is mainly focused upon the role of the developed countries in the developmental levels of the developing world, and what can be the solutions in the post COVID-19 situations for the developing countries. We'll be discussing also education and health and a lot of other issues of the developing world. So of course this would be a very candid discussion. Let me introduce you first, our panelist, Professor Dr. Gazi Mahbub-ul-Alam. Gazi Mahbub-ul-Alam is now in the Bangladesh, but he is a visiting professor in a lot of international universities, and he is also a lead consultant and researcher for the United Nations Development, UNDP, and he has worked, once I saw his CV, it's a lot of immense experience, and you could see that he is involved in a lot of other things. So of course once you will be talking with, you will be seeing Professor Dr. Gazi, you will get to know that how rich experience he has, and he has a lot of wide variety of issues to whom he deal with. Then with Professor Gazi we have Professor Dr. Shahbaz, our very own Professor Dr. Shahbaz. You would have already seen him appearing in my TV program a lot of time, and we discuss on every issue. Primarily we discuss on the economic issues, and we also discuss sometime on the socio-political issues kind of thing. Dr. Professor Shahbaz is professor at Beijing Institute of Technology, China, and he is also a research fellow at Cambridge University. Meanwhile, let me first come toward our Professor Gazi Mahbub-ul-Alam. So Professor Gazi Mahbub-ul-Alam, I welcome you in the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Obviously, it's because of the short of time, I couldn't introduce you much more, because I could see a very impressive profile of yours, and I'm happy that you have joined our show. Let me ask you the first question, the beginning question of the show, that it is a kind of a perception in the developing world that whatever the miseries here at the developing worlds are, whether in terms of the lack of development, whether in terms of the population, or whatever the problems are, one of the major reason of these problems can be attributed to the role of the developed world. People say that the developed worlds are playing a kind of a negative role, or a kind of a questionable role, and because of them there are a lot of miseries here in the developing world. What's your point?
Thank you, Dr. Shujaat, for having me today. Now, let me tell you, the definition of the development is still a very controversy. Now, if you go back to not many years before, then the way we define the development is completely different from today. Now, by this time, if we go back to the economics, then there would be telling of factor of productions. And within the factor of productions, they have been telling many things. So land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship, and so forth on. Now, the baseline of the development is actually land and labor. So when I say the land, many of we think land is a surface, which is not obviously always true. Land means your environment, climate. Land means your solar energy. Land means your sunlight. Land means your air. Land means your anything, pollutions. So now, in terms of having monetary development, sometimes literally they spoiled or many of the development. So sometimes they want to give us a lollipop of development, and we take it as a lollipop development, and then we run into that development, and then again they put another lollipop on our mouth. That's how we. Now you might be asking, is it I'm blaming the developed countries? Not really. If you really make me child and I behave like a child, that doesn't look like the fault of a parents. If I cannot be matured myself, if I cannot be come out from an adult as an adult, is it a problem of developed countries or is it a problem of developing countries? That we can bring in the later part of the talk. But at the moment, actually, the development become a lollipop, and this lollipop is given in many ways. And sometimes this lollipop comes as an ice cream versions. Sometimes this lollipop comes as a sometime I would say different versions. So now we really need to understand what is actually development is all about. By understanding our contextual phenomena, by understanding our religious faith, culture, by understanding many more positivity we have. Development does not always mean that what is going on actually defined by the School of the West. So now the School of the East, they need to come in an umbrella to define as a fact of development. And if we can have that, and if we can export our definitions to the West, obviously things would change many more ways.
Okay, great. It's a very unique and very pertinent point you have raised, that the development is a kind of a lollipop, and obviously the blame extensively and entirely cannot be put on the developed worlds. It is also the mistake of the recipient who is taking that lollipop. Dr. Shahbaz, what do you say? That the point which have been raised by Professor Dr. Gazi Mahbub-ul-Alam, that the development is a kind of a lollipop. It's not a real development. It's not a kind of development which is required by the developing world, but it's a kind of a development which has some vested interests of the developed worlds. What do you say?
Thank you very much, Shujaat, and I welcome my friend from Bangladesh on this digital meeting. I think it is our duty to use that lollipop, which is called on the name of development. It is not a matter, it is a matter for the developing countries how they use the lollipop. The first we see, I mean, if we go to the production, so you know there are two factors of production which are very important. First is the capital, then the other one is the labor. So world nowadays has been divided into two parts. The countries who have the capital, they are definitely applying the capital intensive approaches, and countries who have the labor, they are applying the labor intensive approaches. But the issue of the developing economy is how they can utilize properly their labor as an economic tool to motivate their economy, to activate their economy, then to improve the performance of their economy. It is up to the developing economies. But on the other things, if we see, okay, the developed countries, they need some consumer, because everybody knows the countries who apply the capital intensive approaches, they are producing much more compared to the labor countries who are applying the labor in the production. So I think on the name of development, the world has been divided into two parts. One part of the world is the capital economy, is called the investor colony, and the other part who are the labor economy, so they are the consumer economies. So it is very, very clear that developed countries, they also need to the consumer markets to sell their products. As we say, how can we extend the definition of lollipop? You have seen there are many factors put by the developed countries in developing economies. First of all, they every day developed countries they introduce reforms, either economic reforms, trade reforms, environmental reforms, financial sector reforms via international financial institutions. Famous is the International Monetary Fund. Then on the other side, they have some other things. So they try to keep the developing economies keep busy in the unproductive issues, and on the other side, they are producing day and night. Production what we say 24 hours, and they find the new markets. Why America is pushing India to make him stronger against China? Why America is pushing India to stand against Pakistan? The reason India, China, Pakistan, Bangladesh, these are the basically consumer economies, and they know they are the neighbors and they can fight with each other. We are doing. We stupid people, we are doing. And America, they are selling their weapons, over this area in the form of terrorist activities, in the form of war. And you have seen for the last 10 to 20 years what is happening in Afghanistan. So on the other side, they're saying, okay, so we are doing some reform. This is another kind of lollipop development. So we keep you free, so then you can run your government and all these things. And you see the other thing which I feel, why the developing economies, they are not making progress according to their expectations, because all the parties who are ruling their countries, they need power. So it is the game. A game of power. So in this game of power, I think the developing economies governments, they forget all the objectives, but objectives are needed to stimulate their economies.
Okay, Professor Shahbaz, your point well taken, but let me come to the Professor Gazi on the same point. You are mentioning that the developed world is creating a kind of, you can say that conflicts between the various developing countries, like you have mentioned that there may be the conflict which have been ignited by the developed world, particularly you have mentioned about the United States, the conflicts between maybe Pakistan and India, or there are other some regional conflicts. So is it a really kind of a true thing, or it's just a myth that these conflicts are being triggered by the developed countries, and then these conflicts provide them venue for selling their weapons?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, I'm just asking you.
Okay. It's a very interesting point that my friends, Prof Shahbaz, has brought in. Unless we have a very concrete evidence, it is very hard to convince the world, but there are analogies, there are ways we can put two pieces together and we can really make a system of set. So now let me go back slightly behind what Prof Shahbaz has said. Let me add a couple of things on it. We do not have capital. The day the world has been invented, there is no time, there is no money, there is no rupiah, there is no taka, there is nothing, there is no dollar. So the world did not born with anything. That name is dollar, that name is rupiah, that name is taka. So the world has born with a lot of resources and human talents. So that is what the word genesis of the resources, if you sort of speaking. In order to exploit these two resources and to take back into their own pocket, there is a terminology we defined into a money. Then we convert all this into a monetary form, and giving this promissory note as a piece of weapon, take the resources back and be rich. So now there is a politics. Again, there is a sense of smell, not conspiracy. I would not say that tough word, but there is a sense of cunningness. There is a sense of smartness, actually, to discover the monetary as a promissory note to exploit the world resources into different form. Mm-hmm. So now if you see the development as a phenomenon, then you will be seeing first development was an agricultural development. and the East India Company realizes the potential of the agricultural development, and they exploited all the agricultural development from this area. And then once this is absolutely become very easy accessible, then they become new revolution, which is weaponizations. After the agriculturalizations, there was another phenomenon of the development, which is weaponizations. Then they bring another kind of theory of development, which is called industrializations. Then they're bringing another kind of development, which is called, so to speaking, technologizations. So now that the dilemma has been changing. So what they lead, that become a development, and we take part on that development. Now let us give a very funny example. If everybody shot, Pakistan has a kurta dress, and obviously if everybody wear kurta dress around the world, and if we can export that kurta dress around the world, then we're gonna be benefiting. But if we become a victims, or if we started having a dress that have been designed, that have been raw materials and everything has been done by the Western world, and if we become one commodity of it, and then obviously even if you manufacture that dress, but doesn't mean that you are going to have the development, because manufacturing is costing only few cents, but all the other elementary is costing many things. So they find out the problems on our dress, they find out the way we wear our style, they find out the problem with our beard, they find out the problem with our hair, they find out the problem with our eyes. Now, the problem is sometimes we also give them the easy catching bit. Okay, you find the problem of my beard. Okay, you find the problem of my dress. So sometimes we also give them, so then they use that as a weapon. So then kurtua, pajama, panjami become a symbol of a terrorism. It means that then you can export the t-shirt, you can export the other things. So now once you start doing this kind of playing all these games, you become a market commodity. So in order to make the market commodity, sometimes religions become a victims, culture become a victims, sometimes internal conflict become a victims. Now the religious culture superstitions has become a absolute thing. It's become a backdated. This is not going to be really a chopsticks noodles anymore. So they are bringing sophisticated noodles at the moment now. Okay, how you behave. Now there is a racial tensions between China, India. There will be racial tension between Pakistan, Bangladesh. All this racial tension is created. But the time when there was a colonizations, there was no racial tension between us. Bangladesh, Pakistan, India doesn't have racial tensions on the colonizations. As soon as the colonization left, we become a racial tensions. Why we make this racial tensions? Because if we become a racial tensions, then it's become a commodity, it's become a parcel, and then that is how. Now, sometimes you don't get an accurate evidence because people will not have the evidence, this kind of theoretical connotations. You have to bring this piece together. Now, who should I blame? Do I blame the Western world for that, or do I blame ourselves? I would say I would blame ourselves.
Right.
Why? I say I would blame ourselves. Probably Prof Shahbaz can. But I just want to add one sentences. Why can't we make our universities? Why can't we make our system challenging? Algebra is our system. It's a middle system. Many of
Professor Gazi, I'll be the same question I'll be asking you in the next phase of our program. Let me come to the Professor Shahbaz to start with this post-COVID-19 situation. As Professor Gazi has mentioned, that of course there are a lot of things we can blame to the developed world, but primarily we ourselves, we are responsible for the things which are happening to us. We cannot just blame to the others and we are just sitting here. The blaming to the others is a kind of a catharsis. What do you say that if, for example, the world is now in the situation of pandemic, and every country, whether it's a developed world or the developing world, everybody is just going to focus upon their own economic situations. So how the developing world is going to take care of their affairs in the post-COVID-19 situation, where the economic situation would be terrible, and of course the societal situation would also be in a kind of a state of emergency. What do you?
Yeah, thank you very much, Shujaat. So I'm fully agree with the Professor Gazi that he says either we should blame to the developed countries or ourselves. So I think it is our deficiency that we could not make progress as the other region. Because what I say, if you remember, Shujaat, you are also a graduate from Applied Economics Research Center. So our teachers, they used to teach the book Macroeconomics written by Abel Bernanke. And if you remember exactly, there is a second chapter in the book.
The Bernanke, let me add that the Bernanke is the one who was the chairman of the Federal Reserve of the United States. Okay.
Yeah. So in the second chapter, there is a diagram which clearly says, in American history, when they have wars with other countries and their economy, moved up, and when they have some stable period, then the economy comes down. It means defense industry has a major contribution to the GDP of USA. And another thing, if you see the case of Afghanistan, first they destroy, okay, then they make movies and they sell their movies and they make money. Then they also sell their they invite their pharmaceutical industry. They come, they sell their medicine. So in that way, they are making money by leaps and bounds. On the other thing, what we say, and it is very clear, written in very good book, that they are the regions who develop, not a single country. It is a well written, said by a very good scholar. We can change our enemies, but we cannot change our neighbors. So we have to make a good environment to make progress with our neighbors, and we have to see the common interests. We have to separate some peace in our region so that we can make progress. On the other side, that you say after the pandemic, what is the position of developing economies? I think after this COVID-19, although our minister he defined COVID-19 is basically the pandemic of 19 points, so it's not the case. This is basically the coronavirus.
In fact, that minister happens to be a friend of yours. What I remember that you have a discussion with her.
I'm saying that situation you have seen, pandemic COVID-19, it has exposed every country. But if we see the developed countries, they have capital, they have wealth, so they will recover very soon, and they are recovering. But on the other side, if we see the developing, like we talk about our region, okay, Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. So you see in these countries, COVID-19 is rising in the form of infected people, in the form of deaths, in the but recoveries. I think they're also increasing. But you see the pace of recovery and the pace of increase of COVID-19 in developing countries and in the developed countries. But as I said, they have the capital, they have wealth. They will recover it soon, although it will take 2 to 3 years. But for the developing country, it will take many years to recover their economy from this.
Dr. Shahbaz, I have to take a break. After the break, I would go to the Professor Gazi, and then we'll be entering into the last part of our program. So let's have a break, नाज़रीन, and break के बाद मिलते हैं और discussion करेंगे. मुझे उम्मीद है कि आप हमारी आज की जो bilingual एक discussion है उसको enjoy कर रहे होंगे. So Nazin, welcome back after the break, and before the break we were discussing about the problems of developing countries, whether the developing countries are themselves responsible for these problems, or we can attribute it, or we can put entire blame on the developed world. So we have the panel which the international experts, Professor Gazi from Bangladesh, and we have Professor Shahbaz, who is a professor at Beijing Institute of Technology, China. So before the break, we reached on a kind of a conclusion that, of course, the problems of the developing worlds have to be dealt by themselves. They have to solve their problems themselves. Of course, they are to some extent developed worlds. The developed world is also responsible, but predominantly the developing worlds have to look themselves for solving their problems. Now we head toward the COVID-19 impact, and I would ask to Professor Gazi that what can be the strategies and how we can deal with the crisis which have been put by the COVID-19, the crisis in terms of the staggering economic situation, the crisis in terms of the broken socio-economic structure of the countries, particularly developing world.
Thank you, Dr. Shujaat. Sometime I really enjoyed the conversation with Prof Shahbaz, and many times we have spoken in many occasions and we enjoyed. Let me beat of understanding that the non-some cricket playing, I'll go that analogy. So first, before I go that, we need to understand, we need to note that at the end of the day, it is we who will make our people feed in. It is we who is going to make our people survive. It is we who is going to make our country survive. No means, no way. There is no generosity by the developed world. At the end of the day, we might think that developed world is going to feed us, is going to help us. At the name of help, at the name of charity, at the name of many other ways, they are making us as a market, as a commodity. And to do so, many of their agencies playing a lot of roles to make us as a commodity. Again, I don't want to mention any agency's name. There are a number of agencies. Some agencies work for education, some work for health, some work for women disparity, many things in the international agencies work. But at the end of the day, all the agencies making a market, and there is a market leader and there is a market follower. Now, when you are going to lose a game, what strategy you do? Either you make a defensive or you make an offensive style of life. When it's a defensive, you're losing a game. So if you make a defensive style of playing, you can minimize the gap of the loss. Maybe not 100 runs, maybe you are got it, okay, 20, 40 runs. So I am satisfied, I lose, but I lose only by 30 runs. But some people say, no, I lost either 100 runs or I win. Make me as a offensive. So now COVID-19, it is a country. It is the South Asia. It is the developing countries. They need to pick between two. There is no, are you going to make an offensive or are you going to make a defensive? Now, if we make a defensive, you are not going to actually going to narrow the gap. Rather, you are making a gap wider. At the end of the day, that is what I have seen from the policymaker in Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, or even all the countries that are trying to make it defensive. It is not the time of the defensive. It is the time of the offensive. At the end of the day, I can give you a guarantee, many countries in the developing countries have more food storage than the developed countries. But if they know how to distribute it, if they know how to balance between the poor and rich, they know how to shake hand in between different clusters of the people, actually there is going to be win. But they don't know how to shake hand, because at the end of the day, the mid-Jaffer is always in here. They are arbitrary. Country, the privileged people always want to really shake hand with the developed country counterpart. So if you're going to shake hand, at the end of the day, you are thinking they're going to be our friend, our ally, and they are going to help us. Nobody. The people has become crazy for food. In USA, in UK, in all the Western countries, they become crazy for the food. So at the name of the many other instruments, they are going to actually take your food and make their life easier. So now, how are you going to balance it? Are you going to make a defensive or offensive? Now, how we are going to respond on our health? At the end of the day, this pandemic will go today or tomorrow. It may take billion of people's life, or it may take 100,000 people's life. But at the end of the day, the world will stand if there is no camel. And it is not a camel. It is not a symbol of the camel. The world will stand. But when the world is going to be stand, are you going to stand on your own feet, or actually you are again going to stand by their feet. Many times we did not learn from the history. We did not learn from the opportunities. Many times we did not make our own collaborations. Many times now, if we do not give our food in exchange of anything, we can survive. If we do not give our fundamental things in exchange of anything, we will survive. But I don't see there is hope. We are giving our food, we are giving our many things to the developed counterpart in exchange of money, in exchange of the luxury. Still many are politicians keeping their money into the Swiss bank. Still till today. If there is no world, what is the point of you to keeping money in the Swiss bank? So now you need to understand, do you think our people is our friend or our privilege? Our politicians or our privileged group think these people as their friend. At the end of the day, I always say, we don't see our people as our friend. We don't see our poor people as a friend. We don't see Pakistan as a friend. We don't see India as a friend. We always see the friend is other people. If my mother is not my good friend, how can be my stepmother could be my good friend? If my brother is not my good friend, how can I see that other people will be my good friend? There should be a culture need to be established. That culture see, okay, we are friends in enemies. Not a Netherlands citizen will not love a Pakistani citizen more than a German citizen. But my privileged people, my country privileged people, love these people more than our do. What kind of love? I don't know. Is it a love of gain? Or is it a love of no nations? Or is it a like inferior complexity love? Sometimes I would say this is an inferior complexity love. We need to understand. We need to teach our children. We need to give them the rich history, cultural background. There is nothing to be an inferior complexity. Don't see the cosmopolitan life. See the life where we can make it as a cosmopolitan. Don't respond to the glittering. Rather, make your life glittering. So that is how we need to teach our people. Do you want to be glittering or do you want to catch the glittering? If you want to catch the glittering, you are going to be a product. But if you want to make your life glittering, enlighten, brighten, then you have to find out the way. Many times we teach our children, we teach our students a shortcut, and this shortcut never gives a glittering, enlightened life. That's how I predict. Now, Southern Asia need to really come up in an action plan, in a very important action plan that need to be taken in place, making, okay, if we don't be friend, no, China is not going to be our good friend. If we don't be a good friend, America is not going to be our good friend. If we become good friend, the enemy will be bound to be our good friend. But I will be going to Prof Shahbaz talk and then I'll conclude. So your neighbors, do you feel their neighbors? Do you feel them they are friends? If do so, then make it as a friend and make a counter understanding.
Okay, your point's well taken. Okay, thank you. It was a very brief, very detailed and important point you have raised. Couple of things I noted down, and on these things I will be bringing toward Dr. Shahbaz. The one thing which mentioned by the Professor Gazi, it's a very important that the developing world perhaps have the more food than the developed world. Number one. Number two, there's a kind of inferiority complex love. It's a unique terminology which he has used. What do you think that? Don't you see that for example, Pakistan, we have a lot of food here which is called the food basket, but yet we are just looking for the food. So don't you see, or what's your take on this point, that there is a sheer problem in the policy making? We have a lot of resources.
Yeah, the very important factor that raised by Professor Gazi, that education. And you know, your area of research is also intellectual capital. What I suggest to the government of Pakistan, government of India, government of Bangladesh, and other regional countries like Sri Lanka, Nepal. And you know, if we don't have good intellectual capital, then we are unable to utilize capital properly. for our production purpose. So you see, these countries, I mean, they are the consumer markets of Western world. So why not these consumer markets? They think in a way how they can utilize properly the policies implemented by developed countries for developing countries for their own interests. For example, if we see now the as I do much work on energy economy, you see in this coming November, it would be the COP 2025-26, where Prime Minister of England, they have announced that no more investment in fossil fuels. It means they are going to invest all the money in renewable energy sources. So what will happen after 10 to 15 years? Now the developed countries, they are putting their attention to produce renewable energy sources because environmental laws are very strict in these countries to maintain the environmental quality. After 10 to 15 years, what they do, when they transform their economies from fossil fuels or what we say conventional energy sources to renewable energy sources, then they will implement a law for all the developing economies, transform their economies, your economies for the renewable energy sources. And maybe after 10 to 15 years, they also put restrictions on the exports of developing countries who are producing their exports by using the conventional energy sources. So what I see, I mean, why developing countries, they are not thinking like the developed countries. Why the developing governments of developing economies, they are sincere to their people like the Western governments. And on the other side, if in this pandemic you have seen the people of Western world, they listen to their governments very carefully, and then they adopted the SOPs just to secure themselves. But here in the case of developing economies, the situation is on the opposite side. Government is introducing the SOPs, but our people, they are not properly caring for those SOPs to survive themselves. Why? Because education is not enough in these economies. So through education, we can do. Regarding the policies that you are talking, you can see the policies of Pakistan and India. What are they doing? They are intentionally putting much money on non-development expenditures and on the defense. And as you see, if they put the money, they are just spending on defense, on the developmental projects to alleviate the poverty, to reduce the income inequality. Of course, when those two problems, they are overcome, definitely economies will grow. They have potential. And you know, Pakistan, we have almost, more. Pakistan is the fifth economy in the world who has coal reserves, and we can produce electricity from those coal reserves for coming 200 years. But we are not doing this because we are just looking at the Western countries, and we have, our governments, they have their own interests, not for the sake of people, just for their own sake. So we have to change the phenomena, because what we are doing in this pandemic, as I told you, that we should learn lessons from China. How they have secured their economy, and how from this pandemic, how their people, they reacted according to the nature of the government and their SOPs, and they just come out from the pandemic, and now they are making producing exports in the form of masks, in the form of sanitizer and other medical items. So I think we have to think like that, and we have to convert our policies as Western people. They do for the sake of people, not for their own sake.
Okay, in fact, we have already crossed the time, but I requested my producer, since it was a very interesting discussion, we could have extended a few more minutes, but now we have just 2 minutes. I would ask you to give your final message, because the situation here in South Asia, particularly, it's not very much encouraging. The people are disappointed because of a lot of unemployment, a lot of other things. So what's your message on the future of South Asia? Professor Gazi, from you, a very quick.
Yep. First is, there will be a lot of unemployment, but at the end of the day, if we make a balanced policy, and if you have a good distributions of your wealth, that is the only remedy at the moment. If the distributions policy is not good, then the more challenges is coming. The second is, people will not run with the Bible of the policy. Rather, make the people own-hearted policy. Sometimes, if we give them a Bible policy, people won't read it. People won't oblige to it. So if the policy incorporated as the way the people life should behave, then the policy would function. But if policy become an isolated things from the people, it doesn't function.
Right.
It rather brings more clumsy life that we would say. At the moment, my only humble request to everybody, please do extend hand with your friends, with your colleagues, with your brothers, everybody's. Because at the end of the day, if the world survive, we do survive. And at the end of the day, if we can make a good alloy, and if we exchange our balance with each other, we would be fantastic life. And I would say there is no other alternative except thinking that everybody we are together here to tackle the situations. If we think that, no, I'm going to restore all of the world today, probably we are in a misleading idea. Sometimes I've been still seeing that in our many elite people still are crazy to earn money within the pandemic as a capital of interest. So they are making pandemic as a weapon even to earn money. That is so pathetic. If that is the kind of notions we have, pandemic as a business weapon and making money for that, then I would say literally no talk show would help them unless they ratify themselves from their own heart. Pandemic comes as a lesson, not as a money-making weapon. That's how I would say.
Okay. Thank you. Professor Shahbaz, we have just last minute, please, just your message.
Yeah, what I see, I mean, during this pandemic, that there's a lack of coordination between the government and the people. The reason I think is the governments lose their credibility due to their policies, I mean, against the people. So what I say to my people of the region, that please, I mean, save yourself first, and just I mean follow the instructions implemented by the government. I mean, the form of SOPs to just fight against the COVID-19, and don't kill your future. Don't kill your future, because if you don't, I mean, follow such kind of SOPs, so I mean, I don't think you can survive. So life is very important, and first time do something to save your life. So then we see later. On the other side, I think which I see now, maybe government has learned some lessons, and after during this pandemic, I mean, they are thinking how to just control the situation, and now I think they will move to implement such kind of policies which will raise the welfare of the people.
Right. Thank you very much, Professor Muhammad Shahbaz. Thank you, Professor Gazi Mahbub-ul-Alam. Both of you gave very important insights, and in fact, you also provided us some very solid policy implications that, if followed by the countries, I cannot say that maybe the government would follow, but if followed, can lead toward a better future of not only our own countries, but better future of the South Asia. So my request to all of our viewers, that until unless the people who do not perform or do not act themselves, nothing can be changed. There's a very popular slogan here in my country that is the tabdili, the change. But until we ourselves we don't change, we cannot see any change. And sincerely speaking, that I cannot at least see the change in my country. Thank you very much, and again I extend my thanks to guests. Please stay tuned to our program. We have just also given our social media addresses here. You can just give your feedback to us, as well as you can write emails, and you can also like our YouTube channel. Thank you very much. मुझे दीजिए इजाज़त. Allah Hafiz.